The arrival it was a dark and quiet night. The moon was hidden behind heavy clouds. The forest stood silent, as if holding its breath. Then, out of nowhere, the sky lit up with a blinding flash of light. The sound came next to deep, rumbling roar that shook the trees and sent flocks of birds into the air, far above the earth. A small silver ship was falling fast. Its engines burned bright, leaving a glowing trail in the sky. Inside the ship, 2 alien women sat strapped in their seats, their faces tense and pale. One of them, tall and with sharp, silver eyes, gripped the controls tightly. The other, smaller, with deep green skin and bright golden hair, looked at her with fear. "We are losing power," the tall one said, her voice calm but urgent. "We must land now, or the ship will break apart." The ship shook violently as it entered Earth's atmosphere. The sound of metal groaning filled the small cabin. The smaller alien closed her eyes and whispered something in her own language. A prayer for survival, with a final burst of speed. The ship cut through the clouds and plunged toward a dark forest. It crashed into the ground with a deafening impact, tearing through trees and dirt before finally stopping in a deep ditch. Smoke hissed from the sides, and a strange blue light flickered from the broken panels. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, the tall alien pushed open the ship's hatch. Cold night air rushed in, carrying the smell of wet leaves and earth. She stepped outside, her boots sinking into the soft mud. Her partner followed, limping slightly, her hand pressed against her side. They looked around, their alien eyes adjusting quickly to the darkness. The forest was thick and unfamiliar. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound too loud. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. The smaller alien shivered. "This planet. It feels dangerous," she whispered. "It is," the tall one replied, scanning the trees. "But we have no choice. This is our exile." They both knew the truth. They had not come to Earth by accident. They had been sent here as punishment for breaking the laws of their world. Their crime had not been violence or betrayal. It had been compassion, helping someone their leaders wanted destroyed. For that, they had been banished to this strange and wild planet, and they would have to survive here for 1 year. A sudden crack echoed through the forest. The smaller alien froze, her golden hair catching the faint light of the moon. "What was that?" she asked, her voice shaking. The tall one raised her hand, signaling her to stay quiet. They both listened. At first, there was only the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. Then, another sounds, low, heavy footsteps moving through the darkness. The smaller alien's breathing quickened. "Is it a human?" she asked. The tall one shook her head slowly. "No. Whatever it is, it's not human." The footsteps grew louder. The 2 aliens stepped back toward their broken ship. Their weapons had been lost in the crash. All they had were their wits and the hope that whatever was coming would not find them. A shadow moved between the trees, tall and strange. It stopped just far enough away that they could not see its face. The air felt colder, as if the forest itself was holding its breath again. Then, without warning, the shadow disappeared in 2. The darkness, the tall alien's eyes narrowed. "We should not stay here," she said firmly. "The crash will draw attention." They began moving quickly through the forest. Branches scratched at their arms and roots caught their feet. Every sound made them turn their heads. A snapping twig, a distant growl, the flap of wings in the night sky. The smaller alien stumbled but kept going. She knew stopping could mean death. After what felt like hours, they found an old, abandoned barn at the edge of the forest. Its roof sagged, and the wooden walls were cracked and worn, but it was shelter. They pushed open the heavy door and stepped inside. The smell of dust and old hay filled their noses. They sat down in the corner, away from the moonlight streaming through the gaps in the wood. For the first time since the crash, They spoke in quiet voices. What if this planet kills us before the year ends? The smaller alien asked. The tall one looked at her, her silver eyes hard but gentle. Then we fight until our last breath, she said. That is the only way. Outside, in the darkness, something moved again. The sound was soft but steady, watching, waiting. The night was far from over. And their first day on Earth had only just begun. The punishment the night passed slowly. The two alien women did not sleep. Every creak of the old barn, every sound from the forest kept them awake. The tall one, named Saren, sat with her back against the wall, watching the door. The smaller one, named Lyra, sat beside her, arms wrapped around her knees in the dim moonlight. Lyra's golden hair glowed faintly. Her eyes looked tired. But there was something deeper there, fear mixed with anger. Finally, she whispered, Saren, why did they send us here? This planet is death to our kind. Saren did not answer right away. Her mind went back to that day on their homeworld. The Grand Council chamber was cold and vast, with tall crystal pillars stretching toward the ceiling. Rows of their leaders sat high above, their faces hidden in shadow. The air was heavy with judgment. Saren and Lyra stood before them, bound in glowing restraints. They were not criminals by nature. They were soldiers, trained to protect life. But their mission had ended in defiance. The law of their world was absolute. Any enemy was to be destroyed without question. But Saren and Lyra had refused. They had spared the life of a young alien child from another race. A child their leaders called an enemy when the council demanded an explanation. Saren had stepped forward. Her voice had been firm. I will not kill the innocent, she had said. Our law is wrong, and I will not follow it. Gasps had filled the chamber. Lyra had stood beside her, trembling but defiant. We protect life, not destroy it, she had added. The council's verdict came quickly. They were traitors. Their punishment would be exile to Earth, a planet too hostile for their biology. Its air too thick, its food unsafe, its weather unpredictable. They would be stripped of all weapons, all communication devices. They would have 1 year to survive. If they failed, they would be hunted and brought back in chains, and their execution would be public. Back in the barn, Lyra shivered as she remembered the final words of the council leader. Earth will be your prison and your grave, he had said. The memory burned in her mind. Saren finally spoke, her voice low. They sent us here because they wanted us to die, but they did not understand one thing. We are not easy to kill. Lyra looked up at her, her fear slowly turning into determination. You think we can survive? She asked. Serene's silver eyes met hers. We will survive, not just because we must, but because we will make this planet ours. A sudden noise outside made them both turn. Something moved through the grass, slow but deliberate. Serene's hand went to the side of her belt. Forgetting her weapon was gone. Lyra held her breath. The sound passed, but it left behind an uneasy silence. Saren stood and moved to one of the cracks in the wooden wall. She peered outside. The moonlight revealed nothing but tall grass swaying in the wind. Still, her instincts told her they were being watched. Lyra came up beside her. We cannot stay here forever, she said. Sarah nodded. We will move at first light, find food, water, and a place to hide. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The night was cold, and the barn's wooden walls groaned softly in the wind. Lyra sat back down. Her mind went again to the faces of the leaders. The pride they had in their own cruelty, it made her fists clench. They called us traitors, Lyra whispered. But I think we are more loyal than they will ever be. Saren gave a small smile. To them, loyalty means obeying without question, she said. To us, loyalty means protecting what is right. Hours later, the first light of dawn crept through the barn. It painted the wooden floor with soft gold. Saren stood and stretched, her eyes scanning the horizon. Lyra rose beside her, still sore from the crash. They stepped outside into the early morning air. The forest behind them looked even more dangerous in the daylight. But now they could see the path ahead, narrow trail leading into open land. Far in the distance, smoke curled upward into the sky, a sign of human settlement. Lyra glanced at Saren. "You think they will help us?" she asked. Serene's eyes stayed on the distant smoke. "Or hunt us," she replied. "Either way, we must go," as they walked toward the unknown. Neither of them noticed a shadow moving at the edge of the forest. It followed them silently. Watching, waiting. First contact, the morning sun climbed slowly into the sky. Its light touched the tips of the trees and spread across the land. Saren and Lyra walked carefully along the narrow dirt path. Each step took them farther away from the crash site, but not far enough from danger. The forest behind them still felt alive, as if it carried eyes that never blinked. They had walked for hours without speaking. The silence between them was not from anger, but from focus. Every sound, every shadow made them alert. Birds sang in the branches above, but sometimes the song would stop suddenly. When that happened, they knew something was moving nearby. The smoke they had seen earlier grew closer. It rose from a small village at the edge of the forest. Wooden houses stood in rows, and thin dirt roads wound between them. A few humans moved about, carrying baskets, chopping wood, and tending to animals. Saren stopped and placed her hand on Lyra's shoulder. "We must be careful," she said. "Humans are unpredictable. Some will help us, some will fear us, and some will try to harm us." Lyra nodded. But her golden eyes were filled with curiosity. "They look different from what I imagined," she whispered. Saren glanced at her. "They are more dangerous than they appear," she said. "Remember that they stayed hidden among the trees." Watching the village for a long time, the smell of cooking food reached them. It was strange, but tempting. Their own bodies were growing weaker. They had eaten nothing since their arrival. Still, walking into the open without a plan was a risk they could not take. Suddenly, the quiet morning changed. A loud crash came from the far side of the village, followed by human voices shouting. A cart had tipped over, spilling its contents onto the dirt road. A tall man with rough hands and a thick beard was struggling to lift it. Two younger men stood nearby, watching but not helping. Serene's eyes narrowed. "This may be our chance," she said. "If we help him, perhaps he will return the favor." Lyra hesitated. "What if he screams when he sees us?" she asked. Serene's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "Then we run." They stepped out from the trees. The sunlight hit their alien features, making their skin shimmer faintly. At first, the man did not see them. Then he looked up and froze. His eyes widened. The two young men nearby dropped what they were holding and took a step back. Lyra felt her heart race, but Saren walked forward slowly. Her hands raised to show she carried no weapon. "We mean no harm," she said, in clear but accented English. The man looked at her, his mouth slightly open. You're not from here," he said slowly. Saren gave a small nod. "We are travelers. We need shelter." The man glanced at the younger men, who quickly hurried away. Then he turned back to them. "My name's Daniel," he said. "You'd better come inside before someone else sees you." He led them toward a small wooden house at the edge of the village. The inside was warm, smelling of bread and smoke. A fire crackled in the hearth. Daniel motioned for them to sit. Lyra's eyes darted around. Still wary, Saren remained still, watching him closely. "You're lucky I found you before others did," Daniel said quietly. "This village, they don't like outsiders, and you two are about as outside as it gets." Lyra tilted her head. "Why help us?" she asked. Daniel shrugged. "I've seen enough cruelty in this world. I don't need to add to it, before they could." Respond, a sharp knock came at the door. Daniel's expression hardened. He whispered quickly, "Stay in here." "Don't make a sound." He stepped outside, closing the door behind him. Us. Saren and Lyra moved to the small window and peered out. Two men stood outside with stern faces. Us. One of them held a long stick-like weapon. The other was speaking in low tones, glancing toward the house. "They're looking for us." Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. Serene's eyes stayed on the men. "Not just them," she said. Lyra frowned. "What do you mean?" Saren leaned closer to the window, beyond the two men. In the shadows of the trees, a tall, thin figure stood perfectly still. It wasn't human. Its body was too long, its head too narrow, and its eyes glowed faintly even in daylight. It was watching the house, and it was waiting. Growing bonds. Daniel returned inside after the men left. His steps were heavy, his jaw tight. They were asking if I'd seen anything strange in the forest. He said quietly, "I told them no." Saren studied him. "You risked yourself." "By lying," she said. Daniel shrugged. "Strange things come through here from time to time," he replied, "but I don't hand them over to men with weapons." Lyra's eyes softened. She had expected humans to be cruel. But Daniel's kindness was real, still. Trust was dangerous. She had learned long ago that kindness could hide traps. The next few days passed in cautious steps. Daniel brought them food, simple bread, cooked meat, and water from the well. At first, they tasted everything slowly, afraid it might harm them, but their bodies adapted. And soon, they were eating with quiet relief. In return, Saren and Lyra helped with chores. They chopped firewood. With strength Daniel had never seen in human women, they repaired his roof in one afternoon, moving as if the heavy wooden beams weighed nothing. At night, Daniel asked questions. Where were they from? Why were they here? Saren always gave vague answers. "We come from far away," she would say. It is not safe to speak of our past, but sometimes Lyra spoke more than she should. Once, when Daniel asked about their world, her eyes lit up. She spoke of silver, skies, oceans that glowed at night, and cities carved into mountains. Her voice carried both pride and longing. Saren would watch silently, knowing each word carried risk as days turned into a week. The tension between them began to soften. Lyra started smiling again, a rare thing since their exile. Saren found herself studying Daniel more closely. He was not like the humans she had been warned about. His strength was quiet, his anger rare, and his laughter warm. But Saren never forgot the shadow they had seen in the trees that day. She knew it was still out there, and it was not human. One cold evening, Daniel lit a fire and handed them each a thick blanket. "You'll freeze without these," he said. Lyra wrapped hers around her shoulders and sat closer to the warmth. Saren kept hers folded on her lap, watching the flames dance. The firelight made the room glow. For a moment, it almost felt like safety, but safety was an illusion late that night. Saren woke to a soft, rhythmic tapping on the window. She rose silently, moving like a shadow herself when she peered. Outside, she saw nothing, but she could feel it. The presence in the dark. It was watching them again the next morning. Saren told Lyra they needed to leave. "This man is kind, but the longer we stay, the more danger follows us," she said. Lyra shook her head. "We have nowhere else to go." Daniel overheard them. "You're not going anywhere," he said firmly. "Not while there are men and whatever else is out there looking for you." Saren studied his face. "You speak as if you can protect us," she said. Daniel leaned forward. "I can," he said, "and I will, over the next days." He began teaching them about his world, how to move without drawing attention, how to read human signs and words, how to barter in the village without being noticed. In exchange, they showed him things he had never imagined. Saren taught him how to track movement by feeling the ground's vibrations, Lyra showed him how to use a small crystal from their ship to store and release light. They were learning from each other, and with each day, the walls between them thinned. One evening, while Saren was outside chopping wood, Daniel came to stand beside her. "You work harder than any person I've met," he said. She paused, her silver eyes meeting his. "Work keeps the mind sharp," she replied. Daniel smiled faintly. "Or maybe you just don't know how to rest inside." Lyra was looking through Daniel's old books. She traced the strange human letters with her fingers. When Daniel joined her, she asked him to read to her. His voice was deep, slow, and steady. She listened without speaking, her golden eyes fixed on him in that quiet moment. The line between alien and human blurred, but the peace did not last. One night, as they sat around the fire, a sudden pounding came at the door. Daniel grabbed his old hunting rifle. Saren stood instantly, her body tense. Lyra's heart pounded. From outside, a voice called out, "We know they're in there. Hand them over." It wasn't the voice of a villager. It was cold, almost mechanical. And behind it came the sound of something heavy moving across the ground. Serene's eyes narrowed. She knew that sound. It was not from Earth. Love in the shadows, the pounding on the door grew louder. Daniel stood firm, his old hunting rifle pointed. At the entrance, Saren moved to the side, ready to strike if anything broke through. Lyra's heart raced, every muscle in her body tense. Outside, the cold voice repeated, "Hand them over, or face the consequences, this time." The words were followed by a metallic scraping sound. It was slow, deliberate, and unnatural. Something heavy was dragging itself toward the house. Daniel turned to them. "You to get to the back room." Now, but Saren didn't move. Her silver eyes narrowed. "I know that sound," she said quietly. "It is not human." Through the cracks in the door, a faint glow appeared. The light pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat. Saren grabbed Lyra's arm and pulled her toward the back of the house. Daniel followed, keeping his gun ready. They slipped out through the rear door into the cold night air. The moon hung low, casting long shadows across the ground. From the front of the house came the sound of wood splintering. The thing had entered. They ran through the trees, the ground damp beneath their boots. Lyra stumbled, but Saren caught her before she fell. Daniel stayed close, his eyes scanning the dark. Every few seconds, the faint pulsing light flickered between the trees behind them. It was following. After what felt like hours, they reached the edge of the forest where an old, broken-down cabin stood. Daniel pushed the door open, inside. It was dusty and abandoned, but it would give them a moment to breathe. They sank to the floor, panting. Lyra's hands were shaking. She looked at Saren, her voice breaking. "What is it? What's hunting us?" Serene's expression hardened. "It's a tracker, sent from our world," she said. "They never stop, they never sleep, and they can find us anywhere." Silence filled the room. Only the sound of their breathing broke it. Daniel finally spoke. "Then we have to keep moving. Keep ahead of it." Saren shook her head. "We cannot run forever." As the hours passed, the cold crept in. Daniel found an old blanket in the corner and draped it over Lyra. She gave him a faint smile. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded, but didn't step away. Her golden eyes met his, and for a moment, the fear faded, replaced by something warmer. Saren watched them from across the room. She felt a strange mix of emotions, relief that Lyra had found comfort, but also an unfamiliar ache in her chest. She turned away. Staring out the cracked window into the night, the forest was still. But she could feel the tracker's presence somewhere out there. Days passed in hiding, moving from one shelter to another. In the quiet moments, bonds began to grow. Daniel taught Lyra more human words. Laughing when she mispronounced them, she teased him back. Her smiles becoming more frequent, Saren noticed how Daniel's eyes softened when he looked at Lyra. and how Lyra's voice always grew quieter when she spoke to him. But it wasn't only between them that feelings were changing. One night, as they walked together through the forest, Saren and Daniel fell into step side by side. He glanced at her. "You never talk about yourself," he said. "There's nothing to tell," she replied. "I don't believe that," he said, his tone gentle. She didn't answer, but for the first time, she let herself meet his gaze without looking away. That night, as they camped near a stream, the tracker found them again. Its glowing eyes appeared in the dark. Moving slowly toward them, they barely escaped, leaving behind their meager supplies. Every close encounter with the tracker made their bond tighter with survival. But it was also something more. One evening, as rain fell lightly, Daniel and Lyra sat by the fire. She reached out. Touching his hand for the first time, her voice was soft. "You saved us more than once." He smiled faintly. "You make it worth saving." Saren sat a short distance away, her back to them. She told herself it didn't matter that emotions were a weakness here. But deep inside, she knew it wasn't true. In the shadows outside their camp, the tracker stood still, its glowing eyes locked on them. It didn't rush. It didn't need to, because it knew was only a matter of time. The chase the night was wet and heavy with mist. The rain had slowed to a light drizzle, but the ground was slick beneath their boots. Saren, Lyra, and Daniel moved quietly through the forest. Their breaths came in short clouds, their steps careful. They had been walking for hours, staying ahead of the tracker. But deep down, they all knew tonight it was closer than ever. Suddenly, the silence broke. A sharp, metallic screech echoed through the trees. Saren froze. "That's it," she whispered. Daniel tightened his grip on the rifle. Lyra's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her ears. A faint glow appeared between the trees. The same pulsing light they had seen before. It was moving fast now, weaving around the trunks with unnatural speed. "We run," Saren said, her voice calm but urgent. No one argued. They bolted through the forest, their feet pounding the wet ground. Branches whipped against their faces. The wind howled through the leaves. Behind them, the tracker's heavy movements grew louder. It was not chasing in a straight line, it was circling. Cutting off their path, Saren grabbed Lyra's hand, pulling her left toward a slope. Daniel followed close. The ground tilted downward sharply, and they slid more than they ran. Mud splashed up their legs. Lyra stumbled, nearly falling, but Serene's grip kept her upright. They reached the bottom of the slope, where a river roared past, swollen from the rain. The water was fast, dark, and cold. Daniel's eyes widened. "We can't cross that," he said. Saren didn't hesitate. "We have to, or it will catch us." Behind them, the glow brightened. The tracker was closing in. Its footsteps shook the ground. Without another word, Saren jumped into the river, pulling Lyra with her. The cold water hit like ice. Stealing their breath, Daniel followed a moment later, clutching his rifle above his head to keep it dry. The current dragged them downstream, spinning them toward jagged rocks. Saren fought to keep Lyra's head above the surface. Daniel kicked hard, pushing them toward the opposite bank. The roar of the water drowned out everything except for one sound. A splash behind them, heavy and unnatural. The tracker had entered the river. They reached the far side, crawling onto the muddy bank. Saren turned just in time to see the tracker rise from the water. Its tall, thin body gleamed in the moonlight, its eyes burning brighter than ever, its legs bent in ways no humans could. It stepped onto the bank without a single sound. "Go!" Saren shouted. They ran again, weaving through the trees. The tracker followed, never slowing. Daniel fired once over his shoulder. The gunshot booming through the forest. The tracker didn't fall, it didn't even flinch. The bullet had hit. But it didn't matter. They burst into a clearing where the ruins of an old stone building stood. The walls were crumbling, but they formed a maze-like shelter inside. Daniel yelled. They darted between the broken walls. The tracker entered moments later, its tall frame moving unnaturally fast. Saren used the narrow passages to her advantage, slipping behind a wall and striking with a heavy piece of stone. The blow staggered the tracker for the first time. It turned toward her, its eyes burning hotter. Lyra grabbed Daniel's arm, pulling him away. "This way," she cried. They found a set of broken stairs leading downward into darkness. The air below was damp and cold. They descended quickly, their footsteps echoing in the stone chamber. The tracker's shadow appeared above, its glowing eyes scanning. The stairwell. Saren was last down the stairs. She looked up at it, her jaw tightened. She knew they couldn't keep running forever. And she also knew the tracker wasn't here just to capture them. It was here to kill. The sound of stone cracking filled the air as the tracker began breaking through the stairs. Dust rained down. Daniel pulled them into a tunnel leading deeper. Underground, the walls closed in, the light dimming with every step. The tracker's movements above grew distant. But Saren could still feel it. It wouldn't stop. It would find them again in the dark tunnel. They stopped to catch their breath. Lyra leaned against the wall. Shivering, Daniel knelt beside her, his hand on her shoulder. Saren turned away, scanning the shadows. "We can't stay here long," she said, but inside, she wondered how much longer could they run before one of them didn't make it out alive. Freedom and love. The tunnel twisted and narrowed until the air grew thick and hard to breathe. Their footsteps echoed against the damp stone walls, each sound swallowed quickly by the darkness. Daniel led with a small lantern he had found in the ruins above, its dim light flickering against the rough ground. Saren walked behind him, her sharp eyes searching every shadow. Lyra moved between them, her golden hair catching what little light there was. Hours seemed to pass, though time felt strange down here. Finally, the tunnel widened into a large underground chamber. Ancient stone pillars rose from the ground, cracked but still standing. In the center was something unexpected, a faint blue glow pulsing slowly, like a heartbeat. Lyra stepped closer, her eyes widening. "This is not from Earth," she whispered. Saren joined her, studying the glowing structure. "It's a beacon," she said. "Old, but still working. It might send a signal to anyone nearby." Daniel frowned. "Anyone? Like who?" Serene's face was unreadable. "Like our people," she said quietly. "Or like more trackers." Before they could speak further, the ground above shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The sound of metal scraping against stone echoed through the chamber. The tracker had found them. It appeared at the tunnel entrance, tall and inhuman. Its glowing eyes fixed on them. It moved slowly, deliberately, as if certain there was nowhere for them to run. Daniel raised his rifle, but Saren stepped forward. Her voice was calm. "I'll hold it here. You take Lyra and go." Lyra's eyes widened. "No, we stay together." Saren shook her head. "If it catches us all, there will be no one left to tell the story. You are the one who must live." The tracker lunged, faster than before. Saren met it head-on. Using the stone pillars to block its strikes, she moved with precision. Every step a dance between survival and sacrifice. Daniel grabbed Lyra's arm, pulling her toward another tunnel that led upward. Lyra fought to break free, her voice breaking. "Saren, don't." But Saren didn't look back. The tunnel twisted upward, the sound of the fight growing fainter. Daniel and Lyra stumbled into the open air. The night sky above them filled with stars, but Lyra's chest ached. Every star reminded her that Saren might never see them again. Minutes later, the ground trembled one last time. Then a shadow emerged from the ruins. It was Saren, limping, her face pale but her eyes fierce. The tracker's head was clutched in her hand, its glowing eyes now dark. Lyra ran to her, tears in her eyes. "You came back?" she whispered. Saren managed a faint smile. I promised. I would. They stayed hidden for weeks after, moving from place to place until the danger was truly gone. Daniel's home became their safe haven again. And somewhere between shared meals, quiet talks by the fire, and nights under the stars, love took root not just between Lyra and Daniel, but in the bond all three shared. One morning, Saren found Lyra standing outside, watching the sunrise. This world was meant to be our prison, Lyra said softly, but it feels like home. Now Saren looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Love can turn even the coldest place warm. She said, when the year of exile finally ended, a ship came from their world. Hovering above the forest, a voice from within offered them a choice: return and face judgment, or remain on earth forever. Saren and Lyra looked at Daniel. He said nothing, but the look in his eyes told them everything. They chose to stay. Not because Earth was safe, it wasn't. Not because their past was gone, it wasn't. They stayed because love had made this dangerous, imperfect planet the only place they wanted to be. As the ship rose into the sky and vanished, the three of them stood together in the morning light. The danger had passed, but their story was only beginning. And for the first time since they had crashed, they felt truly free.